Right, welcome everyone to this presentation this evening. We're very honoured to have one of those Australians who's gone overseas to do this working in space, come back to talk to us about her favourite topic. I don't know if we're going to get a joke out of that or if there's a punchline. She claims there's no punchline. We'll see how it goes. Just to introduce Andrea Boyd. She's stationed at the European Astronaut Centre. She's the only Australian ISS flight controller. So there's quite a lot of novelty going on here, like an Australian working in space, a woman, and an Australian who runs the space station, which she'll be telling us all about that in a minute. Mechatronics engineer from the University of Adelaide. She spent years working as an automation engineer in various industries. She was a FIFO mining engineer, she was underground, she did process plant in Central Australian desert. She's certified as an ISS flight operations engineer, payload control, cross-certified in later years for crew operations, serving European Space Agency's Human Spaceflight and Robotic Exploration Directorate. So she's certainly well qualified to speak tonight. So please welcome Ed.
Alright, thanks guys. You're going to have to excuse my voice. I'm on the tail end of a cold. It was 5 degrees in Adelaide and I came from about 30 in Germany, so sorry for the voice. I don't talk to space like this. So tonight I'm going to talk to you a bit about my day job, the European Astronaut Centre, and about the daily operations that we do on the ISS, and at the end I'll tell you a bit about some space stuff that's happening in Sydney as well. So ACER, to give you an overview, we're made up of 22 different countries as well as Canada. So it's quite diverse across the entire continent of Europe, as I said, plus Canada. And there's been a good connection with Australia, as many people probably know. The ELDO project, the predecessor to ACER, launched out of Woomera back in the 60s. So ACER itself, we have our main centres, of course, in Europe. I'm stationed at Cologne in Germany. And then we also have offices around the world in key locations, like our launch site in French Guiana, and C in Washington, and Star City in Moscow, and a business admin headquarters in Brussels. And we're one of the few space agencies that really has all of the different space activities combined under our own mandate as well. So we have these different 9 activities, and the way that it is that every single country signs up for basic space science, and then they get to pick any of the extra ones as an optional program to be involved in, or whatever their country is interested in. So not every country is going to be doing human spaceflight or launches. Some countries like France really like launches. Germany really likes human spaceflight, so does Italy. Lots of other countries, most of them sign up for Earth observation with Copernicus and Galileo and Sentinel. And yeah, so you can kind of like mix and match what your country would like to participate in. We have a fairly good budget, and different countries pay proportionally, and then we have a 1-to-1 geo return policy. So whatever the country puts in, they get that amount back in work packages for their country, for different universities and organisations and their own industry. So getting back to the ISS, it started around the time I was born that Europe joined the program, and then the first elements started being launched when I was in primary school, and I remember watching them and thinking, this is the most amazing thing ever. I have to work on this somehow. Had no idea how. And so Russia and Europe and the US and Japan and Canada were all kind of doing their own thing, and then by some absolute miracle, they managed to combine it together and develop several international standards and work towards a common goal of creating the International Space Station. And since 1998, it's had lots of launches, of course, and it was finally completed in 2011, and it's been permanently occupied for the last 16 years. So Europe actually built quite a bit of what we call the US segment of the station. So if you split it about halfway, you've kind of got the Russian segment and the US segment. Unofficially, the US segment also comprises the European and the Japanese science modules. And Europe built Node 2, Node 3, the robotic arm for the European smaller robotic arm, the Columbus, of course, laboratory for Europe. We also built the PMM, which is where you store the spacesuits, and we built the cupola, which is where you get all of your amazing photos and videos from the astronauts. That was built down in Italy. And the Columbus, which is the main science laboratory for Europe, where we do all of our different experiments, was launched in 2008. It was taken up by Leopold Ehrhardt and Hans Schlegel. Hans has been out to Australia a couple of times. We even dragged him out to Woomera once. And yeah, so we have 10 different racks inside that are capable of different things. One's dedicated to fluid science, one's biology, one's materials science. The European draw rack used to be like a modular one, so you could kind of mix and match, and we made it the same shape as shuttle payloads, basically. So you could have like the locker sizes or the drawer sizes, or a double drawer if you take 2 of them out, or whatever configuration you want to do. And then not last year, 2 years ago, we've reconfigured this now. So we've taken out a giant L chunk, basically, and we've replaced it with a single payload. So we've now got an electromagnetic levitator on board, which is like a giant space furnace, and we've got a cylinder of 18 different samples that we can put in there, and we're using that to create new metallic alloys and a material for aircraft. And Mars is it's a very large Tetris usually machine, and when you fold it out, it takes up the entire cabin. And yeah, you can use it basically to measure muscle atrophy down to the fibre level. So it's quite good for human health. And then a ton of subrack payloads and different things around Columbus. And we have 4 external payloads as well. Solar's been going since 2008. I used to remote control that from Belgium. So that measures the sun across its whole spectra. The side one at the top is now empty, and the bottom one has rapid scat, which gives space weather, especially for surfing and water sports. And the bottom one, we've currently got an experiment with 3 different high definition video cameras. So you can just like log onto the internet on Ustream HDev, and you can see high definition videos of the Earth 24/7, which look amazing. And we're also testing out these 3 different brands at the same time to see which one fares best in space. So we're taking them back down to Earth soon for analysis, and then we'll be using the best one in the future for HDev. And we've just installed a couple more high definition cameras on the station last spacewalk as well. So getting some really awesome extra views now. And then Europe also did the automation transfer vehicle, so the ATV, and we did 5 ATVs in total, finishing it up as planned last year, because the engine of the ATV has now transitioned to become the engine of the new American crew vehicle, the Orion. Oh, and an important point as well is that the ATV was the only other vehicle except for Progress that can refuel the space station. So it would dock to the space module at the very back, and that's where the fuel lines for the space station are connected as well. So it would do reboosts for the station, plus it could refuel the station itself. So now that ATV is no longer in the visiting vehicle manifest, we're completely reliant on Progress now for space station refueling, as we're reliant on the Soyuz for human spaceflight. And of course, we have a ton of different payloads. The space station overall, we've always got about 200 experiments going at any one time. We can remote control lots of them, plus the astronauts do lots of them in parallel. So it's always very busy increments on board the station across a wide range of science and research. So as I said, this year in October, it's going to have 16 years of continuous operations. It was completed in 2011, and that included internet as well. Pretty slow internet, kind of like dial-up, but there's internet. Because it goes through a remote desktop in Houston, and long story for security reasons. So there's not just Houston like the movies though, we actually have in real life 5 different mission control centres. So you've got 2 in the US, Houston and Huntsville, 1 in Europe, in Munich, Oberpfaffenhofen, but Munich, and 1 in Tsukuba in Japan, and of course in Moscow. So the responsibilities between us, Houston is your mission control, safety, US systems and overall authority. Huntsville has all of the US science payload operations. In Munich we do all the European payload operations and the Columbus systems. Japan does similar, the payload operations and the GEM Kibo systems in their Japanese module, and Moscow does everything, everything, like the attitude control and the overall mission safety and visiting vehicles and thrusters and Russian science and everything. And then the way that we do science in Europe is that we split it up geopolitically. So instead of 1 science centre, we have them split up between 7 different countries. We have 7 smaller science centres, but it's the 21st century, so it doesn't really matter if you're in the next room or upstairs or in the next country. we're all very much connected, we're on the same software systems, we're connected via voice loops the entire time, and we work together quite seamlessly across all the countries as well. And the picture that you see on the right is the main control room in Oberpfaffenhofen near Munich, and my desk is the one on the bottom left. So we've had a lot of European astronaut contributions to the ISS with flights as well. So this is a summary of most of the mission patches. There's more to come. And this is a list of the astronauts that we've sent to the ISS since 2001 when the first, when Umberto went up. And Thomas Pesquet will be launching in November 16 this year. And then every single European astronaut will have flown in space. So this is where I work at the European Astronaut Centre in Cologne. It's the outside of our building. You can see we have all of the ISS flags on one side, and then we have all of the European Space Agency member state flags on the other side in French alphabetical order, which makes Germany first because Allemand. So we were established in 1990 with a home base of the ACER astronauts, and since 1998, before that we used to have national astronauts, but now everybody is European astronauts. We don't do national astronauts anymore. We have like the ground floor, so this is a view of the foyer when you first walk in. We've got giant space station models and all of the mission patches since long before I was born. Yeah, so we have the space medicine guys are on the ground floor, and then the astronaut trainers are on the first floor, and then the astronauts themselves and the astronaut division, including us normal humans, are on the top floor as well. And so overall, we're about 100 people total, as I said, with the medical guys, the astronauts, astronaut training, Eurocoms, and we also have a small PR team with us as well. So the first European astronaut on orbit was 1983, and then we were established, and we've actually only had 2 astronaut selections in Europe recently. So we've had European astronaut selections in 1998. And, well, kind of 2008, like the application process closed in 2008 with the selection of the new 6 astronauts in 2009. So it's not so often with that. And these are the astronauts overall that are selected, and we kind of punch above our weight, because in theory, with our percentage of the station, we should only have that many percentage flights in time because of the international agreement. But we managed to negotiate to have at least, well, no, not at least, 1 European astronaut every single year going up to the ISS, sometimes more. So everybody's flown except for Thomas Pesquet, as you can see, but he's currently doing his final exams in Moscow, and then he will be going to quarantine soon and launching up in November after his quarantine. So this is the 1998 selection down the bottom, and the 2008/2009, well, 2009 selection up the top. So you're probably quite familiar with the top crew. We've got Andy from Denmark, Alex from Germany, Samantha from Italy, Thomas from France, Luca from Italy, and Tim from the UK. Now, all of these guys are super active on social media, and they write and run their own social media accounts. They don't get the luxury of having somebody to do it for them. So these are their Twitter handles. You can just Google them to find them, or look them up on Twitter in any case. They're on Twitter, they're on Facebook, they have their own blogs as well. And Samantha especially, she wrote down her entire astronaut training from the start to when she was in space. While she was in space, she didn't have so much time to write, but she tried to do it when she could, and post-flight as well. So I think that if you read through her blog, it gives you a really cool overview of what happens from like go to woe when you first get selected as an astronaut candidate. And all the other guys are super active as well. So you can check them out. And just for an overall thing, you can just Google blogs ACER astronauts, and you'll find everybody's links to everything there. And as I said, it really is them. So if you chat to them, you're engaging with them directly, and everything's from them directly. So with the astronaut training that we do at EAC, we have actually all the astronauts from all the countries come through to us, not just the European ones. So we're constantly having a flow of Russians and Americans and Japanese and different Europeans coming and training. So previously we used to also train on the ATV, which was quite a complex simulator, and had full docking simulation capabilities inside that life-size module. And we, of course, have the Columbus training module for systems and payloads. In addition, we also have pre-EVA training, so we've got our own neutral buoyancy facility, and we can lower the entire Columbus module into that, so you can do spacewalk training in there. Sometimes they let normal humans swim in it as well. It's a 10-metre deep pool the entire way, which is quite trippy going end to end, where there's no shallow end, it's just all deep. And then the science racks, as I said, so you've got your physiology module with Biolab, European draw rack, which is now the electromagnetic levitator, and the fluids and MARES, and a ton of other sub-rack payloads. And we've trained almost 150 crew members in total. So when you're first selected as an astronaut, you're actually just an astronaut candidate. So you do have to pass a basic training level to then go into mission selection potential. And this is sort of the training flow of how it goes, and the astronauts will go around to, even in their ASCAN phase, they'll be coming around to Moscow and Scuba and Cologne with us, and JSC of course, and they usually do 1 or 2 weeks in Montreal as well. So in your basic training with ASCAN, these are the sort of things you're going to be looking at. So a ton of engineering and a ton of science. And it doesn't really matter what you specialised in to begin with, because you're going to be learning everything. And then the special skills. So these are the ones that people don't think about quite so much, but these are really important for astronauts. So if you were looking at going into astronaut applications, then you should be trying to get these skills, as many of these skills as you can beforehand. So getting your scuba diving, for example, being good with people, being good with robots. If you can get on a zero-G flight somehow, that's pretty awesome. You'll have to do it. You get to do it in your training anyway. Russian language. Every astronaut has to be fluent in Russian. The final exams are always in Russian language. I'll show you a bit more about that later. And photo and video skills, surprisingly, and like writing blogs and things like that. I mean, when you're up on the space station in the cupola and you try and you've got like a giant lens and you're zooming in like a lot. I mean, those photos, the photos that you see of Earth and the specific cities, they're extremely zoomed in. And photography skills is something that definitely needs to be learnt. So once you've passed your ASCAN and you're up for mission selection, you've been selected for your mission. So this is then the final flow. So you get 2.5 years of mission-specific training with your exact 2 crew members that you're going to go up with, then 6 months on orbit on the International Space Station, and then 6 months of post-flight when you get back down. So the training locations is in Johnson, of course, in Cologne with us, and in SUP in Moscow, and in Scuba in Japan. So it's about 40% in Houston, training on the US systems and payloads with the US EVA suits and SSRMS, which is the robotic arm. And about 44%, so most of the time, will be in Moscow. And then you're looking at Soyuz operations, Russian systems, Russian payloads. The Orlan EVA suits, which are quite different to the American EVA suits, of course, and winter survival, so you get dumped in Siberia for a couple of weeks. Well, no, less now, actually, it's a few days. And you do, survival training on that as well. And then you have 9 weeks in total with us at the European Astronaut Centre, looking at Columbus systems, Columbus payloads, and we do the pre-EVA in our pool as well. And about 6 weeks in Japan. So that's looking at Kibo systems and Kibo payloads in a similar way. And then finally, once you've gone through that 2.5 years of training, well, you're almost at your 2.5 years, you get your final astronaut exams. And these are always in Moscow. You have a 6-hour final exam in the Soyuz simulator, which is extremely, extremely realistic, extremely cramped and extremely intense and sweaty. And then you get an interrogation by the Russian final board in Russian. And then if you pass all of that, you get to go to Yuri Gagarin's office and you get to sign the astronaut book, saying you're ready to fly. So you can see Samantha and Terry and Anton signing that there, and Alex, and I'm going to blank on their names, I'm sorry. Yeah, the other backup crew behind them as well. So for the launch and the docking, you go down to Kazakhstan, you'll be in quarantine for a couple of weeks, because everything you do is behind glass, and your Soyuz will come up on a train and then go up to the launch pad, and then you'll do your final visit and check of the launch before you go up. And the priest goes around with lots of different traditions. I'm sure you've seen that on YouTube on NASA TV. And then finally your launch. So this is a really cool night launch that we had recently. And of course separation of the initial stages, and then your main Soyuz module will go forward for docking. It's normally a fairly automated docking, but the pilot can take over at any time and do a manual docking as well. So actually for Tim Peake's docking, the automated docking failed, and Yuri took over and he tried to dock manually straight away, but it didn't work. So they almost crashed into the station. He had to very, very quickly back up, and that's not as simple as it sounds. I've been in the Soyuz simulator and it's horrendous. It's nothing like flying a plane. It's very difficult. And yeah, so he had to back up again. He's a pro, he's done this a lot of times, thankfully. And he successfully then manoeuvred manually twice and was able to dock safely. And then first day on the International Space Station. So as I said, there's internet in space, so this was Samantha's first week from space, from the cupola. And then this is what the astronaut selection flow looks like. So we always have a crew of 6 astronauts is considered a full complement on board the space station, and they go up in the Soyuz in groups of 3. And then it's usually quite regular, except for the what we had last year, which I'll talk about. So yeah, so you got your 6 there, then 1 stayed for 6 months and 1 stayed for just 3 months. So these guys come down. There's about a week gap. Right now we're in the week gap actually, so there's just 3 people in space. And then the next 3 come up to join them and make the full crew again. So right now we've just got Kate and Tuck and Anatoly in space, and Shane and Andrea and Sergey are getting ready to launch on September 23rd, very soon next week. And Jeff and Alexei and Oleg just landed last week on Wednesday. So it's pretty regular like that. It's very routine, almost, I guess now, with the Soyuz launches. They're very, very reliable, Russian launches and landings, always very precise. Except for the 1-year crew that we did last year. So Scott and Misha were up for an entire year. And that meant that we had a handover, because the Soyuz is only valid for like 210 days in space. So we did a short 10-day mission to change the Soyuz for them and then swap their seat liners, and had Aiden and Andy from our space agency up there for 10 days. Aiden, it was a lot more chilled for him from Kazakhstan. It was pretty intense for Andy. We got him to do about 6 months worth of European science in 10 days. Which turned into 8 days because then we had a 2-day docking. So we went to the slip plan and that was interesting. And Gennady Padalka as well. So Jeff has the most time in space for a American astronaut, and Gennady has the most time in space for any human ever, which is like 800 and something days. It's quite ridiculous. And he just got selected to go again. And in the press conference they were like, "Why do you go back to space?" He's like, "I'm a cosmonaut, it's my job." So he's going to crack the 1,000 when he goes back up for his next mission, which is insane. He's really cool to work with. I worked with him directly actually. Well, I work with all of them, but I don't get to work with Russians so much because we mostly work with USOS side. But we have a joint Russian-German experiment at the moment, Plasma Crystal 4, which is located in Columbus. So the cosmonauts will come in and work on that. So I've worked with 5 different cosmonauts now. And I got to work with Gennady actually, and he's just lightning fast. It was really cool to work with him actually. And he was just crazy ahead of the schedule, and I think at one point he had to wait 7 minutes for the gases to diffuse or something, or 10 minutes, sorry, I think, and he's like, "Okay, I come back." So he floats off, and then he comes back, but it's only been 7 minutes. He's like, "Okay, next," because before they were just like, "Okay, next, okay, next." He was just like gunning it, and then yeah, and it's only been 7 minutes, and I'm just like, normally we're talking English, and I'm just like, "Нет, подождите, 3 минуты еще, пожалуйста," and he's like, "Хорошо." He just like floats there for 3 minutes. But yeah, it was super cool, and he was like, bang, bang, next, 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 and he didn't want to read the procedure, he just wanted me to tell him, and then yeah, he was like, I think we were done like 10 minutes before the activity was even scheduled to start. It was pretty awesome. So all of these guys are really cool to work with actually. You don't really get bad astronauts. And then of course, so Shane and Andrea and Sergey are launching soon, and then Toman, Oleg and Peggy are launching in November 16. We also do transmit, so on the internet you can also find space station live displays, so you can see the Houston console displays live in real time, and this is actual raw telemetry from the station, so you can see the raw telemetry on the other side, and then if that's just when it first comes up, it'll be like that, and then it'll convert to normal numbers that you can look at. So yeah, if you're interested in that, you can look at what we see in real time whenever you like on the net. And also you can listen and look in real time, even on your phone, on your tablet, it works quite well. Ustream ISS Live, this is quite amazing because it has one of the cameras from the station live all the time. We don't have continuous coverage, so if we have a handover between the satellites, of course, you're just going to get a grey or a black screen. But otherwise, I took this screenshot yesterday, and this is the sort of thing that you'll see. So you can actually see the external cameras from the space station, and it has unfiltered space-to-ground audio live 24/7 as well. So anytime you hear an Australian accent, it's me. The re-entry and the landing then. So after the mission, they come back down, of course, in the Soyuz and land somewhere in the Kazakh desert. there's like a survival kit and a tent and rations and a gun for bears and all that stuff in the Soyuz, but they haven't had to use it in a long time. So the rescue teams are pros at this, and they've got the helicopters and they're just bang, 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 and they track them, and then they're there like 20 minutes later, they get them out the Soyuz. The landing is a soft landing because it has the parachutes and it has like the thrusters and the final descent, plus your seat raises up and your seat liner is exactly molded to your body as well. So the crew will go in their snorkel suits and sit in one of the seats and get this like plaster cast kind of poured around them. So they get really an exactly molded seat liner to help with the landing. And then the seat itself like rises up, so you get extra shock absorption for springs as well for that. But that said, all the crew that I've spoken to have said it's like train wreck, car crash when you land. It's pretty harsh, and hopefully you don't roll. That was Alex's, he rolled. But yeah, the crew is really, really efficient for the landing procedure. The medical guys are there, they pick you up, they set up temporary tents, check you out, and then you go and have like a tea ceremony in traditional Kazakh gear, and then you go to Karaganda, and then the Russian guys go straight back to Moscow, and then ACER guys go to, the plane can't go all the way, it has to stop somewhere, so it used to stop in Scotland, and then they changed to an eco-plane, so now they can only make it as far as Norway, and that's their stopover. And then, yeah, and then usually we take our European crew directly back, because we have the rehab ourselves, and then ACER keeps going to Houston from there. So, but when you first land, you get taken out of the Soyuz. This is when Luca and Karen and Fyodor landed in 2013, and yeah, and it was pretty chilly for them, so you get put into different seats and kind of rugged up before they go in the medical tents, and you get a satellite phone to call one person. Choose wisely. Yeah. And then you get the post-flight 6 months, which is what I talked about. So you're debriefing with the scientists of the experiments that you've worked on, debriefing with all of the training centres that you worked at, and you kind of have a pretty crazy lifestyle as well. After the medical rehabilitation, of course, then you're jetting around the world again for 6 months at the different centres for post-flight. So I'm going to go back to my day job though, where I work. So at the Astronaut Centre, as I said, we've got the medical guys, the training guys, and the astronaut division itself. So this is what we do with the Space Medicine Office. They're responsible for the health, of course, of all the European crew, the astronaut selection. We do medical certifications of every single astronaut, even if they're not flying anymore and they've retired, they still come in for a yearly physical. I mean, they don't have to, but pretty much everybody does. So we've got this data on all of the astronauts for every single year since forever, since they started being astronauts. And then there's a BME console as well, biomedical engineer console, located in Cologne. And uniquely, we also have a Eurocom console in Cologne as well as in Oberpfaffenhofen. So when we have a European crew on board, one of us will go down there for a week at a time, usually myself or a couple of other guys. Or we have the option of also taking shifts in Cologne as well. And we're just next door to those guys. The Space Medicine Office is also looking at some payload projects and different countermeasures projects as well for some of the medical effects in space. So they've developed a skin suit, and actually the skin suit, so most of the initial design and layering was actually very, very influenced by a guy in Melbourne, James Waldie. So that's Aussie connection there. He was over just before we did the first test of skin suit in September last year, and then we're going to do another skin suit experiment, but long duration with Thomas from November. And then they've also developed Fred, which they're hoping, well, it's shown good promise so far in rehabilitation of spine post-landing. And then, yeah, okay. So this is also at the Astronaut Centre, because the ISS is not going to be around for that much longer. So we were looking at 8 to 12 years maximum. So we've definitely got the extension from all of the international partners until 2024. And then after that, theoretical maximum is 2028. But we need to do engineering analysis closer to the time. So at ACER, we're also looking forward about what we're going to do next. And the big thing for us is, of course, the Moon Village that you've probably heard Jan Werner say many times. And at EAC, we're actually already constructing the lunar base for moon training, for astronaut training. So we wanted it to be, at EAC, because we've already got the DLR specialties, and we've got the EAC expertise, of course. And we wanted to have, like a decent sized test bed. as well as integrate the capabilities that we already have with our space network, space internet rovers, and quite a few other things. So I'm not allowed to show you the real thing yet, but it's under construction right now. So between my building and NVHAB, which is where the astronauts come back to after they are in space, we've got a 34-metre diameter dome, which is going to be 2/3 lunar regolith, and not high fidelity because that's super expensive. So medium fidelity, and then we've got like high fidelity lunar regolith, of course, in another section, and then 1/3 is like your control stations and rover initial sets, and then there's a habitat module as well attached to that too. So that's under construction at the moment. It should be finished quite soon. And then we'll start doing quite serious lunar analogues and lunar training as well at the Astronaut Centre. Looking forward to what we're doing after the ISS. Which I know is a long way away, 8 to 12 years, but this is the sort of things that you need to be thinking about quite a bit in advance. So we also created a subdivision called spaceshipEAC within the centre, and these guys are looking at really futuristic projects. So these are the ones that are doing lunar regular stuff, 3D printing. They've got looking at like different forms of energy storage using lunar regolith, growing plants off Earth. Lots and lots of different more futuristic things. And we have an army of interns as well looking at that too, in addition to regular staff. And this is now headed up by Dr. Aidan Cowley from Ireland and Samantha Crisperati. So the use cases, of course, for the lunar base, there's a ton of them. We've already got the Meteoron rovers that we drive from the International Space Station. We've done that very successfully. We've got the main like lunar rover, which is the STEC that we've driven, and so we have like a really cool setup with them, the overall Meteoron project to drive interplanetary rovers, and we've tested that and shown that it's worked very successfully in many cases. We're looking at doing that sort of on the lunar test bed as well, and then adding in sort of dust issues and all of that. There's your obvious ISR UOPS. We've got the Regolite Horizon 2020 project, which is going to be integrated into that. And plus, as I said, you've already got all of your existing Astronaut Centre assets, as well as the analogue expertise that we have there as well. And then inside where ATV is, we're looking at replacing that with another test bed. So it would also have the habitation module, and then lower fidelity lunar regolith in the giant bin there. But that also has like the EVA suits that we've already developed and we've been testing underwater and in the desert for quite a while now. And then we've got a crane at the top for gravity offloading to properly simulate being on the moon. And then the smaller one is where our high fidelity lunar regolith is that we can do quite serious science on. And then we also have, so you don't just go to the space station, the astronauts also rotate between underwater missions and underground missions. So the underwater ones are run by NASA, it's called NEMO with 2 E's, you can Google that, I won't speak too much of it because it's not from our agency. But the caves training is done from EAC. So they go underground for about a week, and we've been running this for quite a few years now, and uniquely we try and get in an astronaut from every single space agency. So we always get someone from Russia and Japan and Europe and the US. Sometimes Canada if someone's available, and but they only have like 2 crews, so it's not so often. And then we've been trying for a while, because ACER's already been working with China a lot, and we've tried to get a Chinese taikonaut along for a while. But NASA always said no for political reasons that I'm sure many people are aware of. So this year, NASA didn't say yes, but they didn't say no. So we managed for the first time, this is like historical breakthrough, we got Russian cosmonaut, Chinese taikonaut, 2 NASA astronauts, European astronaut and a Japanese astronaut all together on the same mission in Italy for a whole week in July, and it was amazing. And clearly they have no issues working together. These are the guys after they've been underground for a couple of days, and they're loving it. They obviously had a ton of training before they went underground for the main mission, so they had professional splunking and geology training and different fitness training initially. They passed those quite well. And then there was some other interesting language ones. This was my favorite though, was when Sergey was teaching how to speak Russian, but like using the English alphabet. And then yeah, underground, the caves done in Sardinia, where we do the missions every year, are amazing. I mean, you should check out, these are photos from the crew this year. There's an underground water system, they do diving in that as well. There's obviously quite tight spots that they go into. And they explore and map and do quite a bit of science underneath. And then this year we also introduced 3D photometry, so they were doing some extra three-dimensional mapping of the cave itself as one of the objectives as well. And then this was when they finally emerged after a week underground. Still friends. Yeah. And after they had a shower. Yeah. So you can see, two from America, Spanish, European, Chinese, Russian and Japanese. Very cool combination, and honestly the first time this combination of space agencies has ever worked together. And the most unique combination of flags, therefore, that you will have seen on cave naut suits. So if you're interested more about that, there's the blogs, the caves blogs. You can Google that anytime. There's amazing high-resolution photos and videos and some of the science output that they have from there as well as first-hand accounts from all of the astronauts themselves, which is super interesting. Now, we're going for time. All right, so I'll wrap up and go to questions soon, but I also wanted to point out some things that you can do in Australia and for students or children that you know that you can do in Australia. So in year 10 or year 11, you can apply for the National Space Camp. It's on every year, usually around October. The website's just spaceschool.com. It's quite easy to remember. In year 11 or 12, there's the Australian Youth Aerospace Forum, which rotates around different cities, although to be honest, it's mostly in Brisbane. And that's an extremely good one to apply for if you've got high school students that are interested in that. At university, you can apply, I mean, there's a ton of programs, of course, here that I'm not going to go through, but as well nationally, there's the Aerospace Futures Conference, which I really highly recommend. It's a merit-based application process. It's every July, and the applications close quite a few months earlier. But as I said, merit-based applications. So for university students, I really highly recommend this, but be very thoughtful with your answers. And if you're in first year and you don't get in, it's mostly because the later years would have priority even if you're equal merit, just because you've got another chance to apply. So don't be put off if you don't get accepted in first year, try and apply again. And then when you do a final year project in engineering especially, if it's a space-based one, put it in for the VSEC NASA Australian Space Prize, because you've already done the work and you've got the report. So put it in for that, because one person every year is also selected to go to the NASA Academy in summer. So we've managed to negotiate one place for an Australian citizen to attend, which is normally only open to Americans. And as I said, if you're in your final year of engineering and you've done the work anyway, put it in for that, because you might be able to go to NASA in the winter, their summer. And similarly for the AIAA Student Conference. The first week of October is World Space Week, so there's a ton of events. You can look at the calendar on their webpage every single year in October. In Sydney, there's also a group called Orbit Oz that has monthly meetups. And in November, you guys are quite privileged, because it's only Sydney, Canberra and Melbourne, that Buzz Aldrin and the chief scientist at ACER and one of the leaders from NASA are also coming over with National Geographic to present Mars Live stage show, which is going to be amazing. So have a look at that in November. And then, of course, next year, we managed to secure, and this was no small thing, the International Astronautical Congress. This is like the Olympics of the space world. So you have to apply for it to be a host nation like 5 years in advance, and then the final shortlist goes out about 4 years in advance. And then they do site visits and everything, and then during that year, and there's a ton of paperwork and a lot of other stuff. And then 3 years in advance, at the current year's conference, they vote for which of the countries is going to win for 3 years' time. And we were up against Germany and the USA, who are ridiculous powerhouses in the space world, and also Turkey and Ireland, that weren't so difficult to compete against. But we won. Like, I cannot emphasize how amazing it is that we won. So every single space agency in the world, every single space company in the world, a couple of hundred astronauts are all going to be descending on Adelaide next year in September, so in exactly a year's time. So I really highly recommend. Paper submissions open in January and they close around February, I want to say.
Usually
right.
end of February.
February, yeah, end of February. And actually they might have been open in December, we'll see. But yeah, the paper submissions close quite early, end of February. There's very good discounts for students if you'd like to attend. But I would really highly recommend making plans to get along to that, because this is amazing, and it's yeah, the biggest thing to come down to Australia in a long time, and it's really, I can't overemphasize how amazing it is that we won, and the entire world is looking forward to coming to Australia next year. So for more information about ACER and our programs, I've just taken you through what I do at my day job, and at the European Astronaut Centre we have, as you saw, a lot of other different programs and science missions, so you can find all of the information on ACER.int. And I'm open for questions.